sometimes it's very difficult to figure out if you're making a pact with the devil or an angel. When I was 26 years old, 40 years ago, I started a puppet theater, Blue Sky Puppet Theater, here in the Washington, D.C. area. And we started off with two branches to the company from the very beginning. We had a children's theater, and we had an adult theater. Well, not very long, 2 years after we had started the company, I got a call from the Kennedy Center. It went something like this. Hi, Michael. This is Carol. I run the children's programming here at the Kennedy Center, and we're putting together the Imagination Celebration for this March. We want to know if you'd like to be part of it. We've seen your work and think you're one of the best up-and-coming companies. And I went, could we ever? Yes, yes, of course we would. And we were just over the moon with this. It was so exciting just after 2 years to be recognized by the Kennedy Center and a children's festival. Well, we signed a contract in November for a March date. January 1, she calls back a second time. And this woman now had a halo around her. She was a theater angel. And it was bright gold halo as far as we were concerned. So she calls up and says, Michael, the Carter administration wants you to perform for their inaugural celebration here at the Kennedy Center. And I said, with our children's stuff? He said, no, they've seen your work on the street, and they want your political street theater work. And I went, really? And he goes, yeah. And I said, are you sure about this? And he goes, yeah. And I said, she said, tell me about it. And I said, well, because it was D.C. and we were doing all these street shows, we figured it had to be political in nature because that was D.C. and it had to be. And we came up with a show called The Puppet President. And we had 11 puppets in the show, and each one of them would get a minute to tell their campaign jokes, and then a minute to sing their campaign song, and then the audience would elect the new president of the United States from amongst the puppets with the volume of their approval or disapproval. We had an arm, an audience response meter. So she said, yeah, that's the one. I said, no, really? And she goes, yeah. And I said, let me tell you who's in it. And we'll just make sure we're all on the same page. And I said, well, Jimmy Carter's in it. This was the year of Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford, the runoff, and Jimmy Carter won. So Jimmy Carter, Gerald Ford, Richard Nixon, Nelson Rockefeller, Henry Kissinger, Ted Kennedy, and Jerry Brown ran together. And then we have a banana running, and we have a cold duck, and we have Sonny Jurgensen running. She said, that's the one they want. And I said, well, I don't know. I said, why don't I just tell you one of the jokes or something? She goes, yeah, go ahead. And I said, okay, you got to imagine I have a Jimmy Carter puppet on my hand now. And he goes, a lot of people want to know what qualifies me to run this country. Well, I say I ran a nut farm for many years. I think that qualifies me pretty good. He goes, yeah, that's the one. And I go, all right. And I said, okay, and Richard Nixon's song goes something like this. In Washington, where things are rotten, some things are best left forgotten. Watergate, missing tapes are all things of the past. So vote for Richard Nixon today. Hooray! My policy is honesty. I'm no tricky dicky. She said, that's the one. I said, are you sure? And she goes, yes, that's it. One of their staff people saw you on the street and they love it. All right, yeah, sure. Then we were like, wow, this is so great. We were fantasizing being on the Tonight Show a month later, by that time. So January 22nd comes rolling around, and it's the inaugural celebration at the Kennedy Center. And we're used to performing for like 30 or 40 people at Farragut Square or on Capitol Hill on Pennsylvania Avenue or in Georgetown, And now the grand foyer of the Kennedy Center is packed. There's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people out there. And we're, woo, boy, this is a whole different scene. And so, of course, Jimmy Carter wins in a landslide in the Puppet President show. It's just pegging at the meter, and, he gets a half a minute standing ovation. And, of course, Richard Nixon gets booed off the stage, but we had a line for that every day because he'd always get booed off the stage. And I'll remember your faces. So it was great. It was so much fun. And, of course, they booed all the politicians besides Jimmy. So we're supposed to do 2 shows. And the second one is supposed to start at 3 o'clock. 5 minutes to 3, this woman, Carol, who had been the angel of all angels getting us, she had like a hula hoop halo now. And she had wings. She comes up, and I see her come up with these 2 guys with suits. I don't see the halo. I don't see the wings. What I see is these 2 little red horns coming up out of her head. And she goes, we need to talk. And I we've received complaints about that show. We want to know what's in it. I said, I told you what was in it. It's like each one of the candidates gets a minute to tell their jokes, and each one is, who's in it? And I go, well, let's see, Jimmy Carter. Yeah, who else? And I go, well, Gerald Ford. You got to cut him. Cut him? Who else? And I said, well, Richard Nixon. You got to cut him. Nelson Rockefeller. You got to cut him. Henry Kissinger. You got to cut him. Ted Kennedy and Jerry Brown. You got to cut him. What? You're doing this at showtime? And I said, well, we have a banana. He can stay. Cold duck, he can stay. She can stay. Sonny Jurgensen, he can stay. He gets a pass. So I just came up with that. So I am sitting there just going crazy, and my partner, Joe, my performing partner, Joe, is sitting right over here. He's out there. He's playing every song. Now, this starts at 5 minutes to 3. We're supposed to start the show, and it's now like 15 after 3 because these negotiations are going along, and we have like 30 of our friends show up for this thing. And they know what the show is, and they start this chant, we want a puppet show, we want a puppet. There's like 600 people going, we want a puppet. And I'm back there going, you want what? You sure? You want this? You have the gall to censor us 5 minutes before showtime when I told you what the show was? And every now and then Joe would look around the corner and he'd go, and he's trying to play every song, and I go. And so finally, every single fiber of my being just is wanting to go. Let me just do that again in case somebody missed it. But then I remember we got this contract for March for the Children's Theater. And I know she's going to pull that contract if I don't play ball. I go, what do I do? Do I sacrifice my artistic integrity? You know, I want to go back there and just do the show and damn the torpedoes, but I remember the other contract. And so I go backstage, and Joe's got the Henry Kissinger puppet ready for the first one puppet coming up. And he goes, what is all this delay? And I said, man, this isn't funny. And he goes, what is it? I said, we got to cut Kissinger. And he goes, what? This is Gestapo Germany? I said, Joe, man, it's not funny. I said, we got to cut Carter, we got to cut Ford, we got to cut Kissinger, we got to cut Rockefeller, we got to cut Nixon. Nixon? Yeah, we got to cut Nixon. We got to cut Jerry Brown, Ted Kennedy. Then at least 4 people. And I go, I know! So we do the show, and the first show, man, they're just people roaring with applause, and we're just feeling great. The second show is like, and particularly our friends who had come to see it knew the show, but they'd seen it at parties and things, and they go, what was that? And we go, and we just kind of put our heads down and said, don't ask. And we just kind of packed up and slunk out of there. Well, March comes along, and we do the Children's Imagination Celebration. It goes great. We're really happy with it. And Carol and I, exchange polite smiles. And I don't see horns, but I don't see any halos either. But that's not exactly the end of the story. 5 years later, she calls up, and she goes, Michael, the National Symphony wants to produce a puppet presentation with the National Symphony on the concert stage. Do you think you can handle something like that? Yeah, I think we can. And so I got to tell you, that was a thrill of a lifetime to work with the National Symphony 80-piece orchestra on the Kennedy Center's concert stage. So sometimes you just don't know if you're making a pact with a devil or an angel, because sometimes they're the same person. Thank you.